Toronto is a city of 630 square kilometers, with 158 neighborhoods and more than 3 million people, each with their own story to tell. This is For the Love of TO with Brad Bradford.
All right, everybody, welcome back to For the Love of TO. I'm Brad Bradford, and today we're joined by a very good friend of mine, a special guest, and someone who has been leading one of Ontario's fastest growing communities for more than a decade, just down the 401. Today we have Mayor Cam Guthrie from the City of Guelph here. Welcome to For the Love of TO, Mayor Guthrie.
Thank you so much.
And should I call you your worship?
No, Cam is good.
Cam's all right for the podcast.
Yeah.
Let's kick it off by chatting. What brings you into the Big Smoke? Why are you in Toronto today?
Yeah, I was invited here. There's a conference called Strong Cities, and it happens to have their big conference in Toronto. So it's a 3-day event, lots of municipal and elected officials and mayors and councillors and even administration as well, all learning about city issues, better communication, better ways of kind of informing your public, safety issues, battling online hate and rhetoric, misinformation, disinformation. That is the theme of the conference, and it's been very good.
And they had you as a speaker there today. What were you talking about?
Yeah, so I was talking about some of the things that we discussed in the city about safety for people, whether it's at events, how communication is much better to use, and trying to inform your community about different things. And I openly admitted, and I think more politicians should do this personally, that sometimes it's a better idea just to say, I don't know, when certain issues are coming at you, and to find people in the community that can be leaders and give them the ability to step up in some of those spaces where there's difficult topics to sort of lead the way, because sometimes there's people outside of the mayor's office that know much better than the mayor, and it's okay to admit that and to give them that platform. And so, especially on touchy subjects that are sometimes difficult in communities to discuss, the mayor doesn't always have the answer.
That's probably very refreshing to hear, and I'm sure there's lots of listeners to the show right now that can recall interactions with leaders at different agencies or maybe the workplace or, heaven forbid, even local government, where somebody's been trying to assert a position and they might not have all the facts, they might not have all the information, and your suggestion would just be own that, recognize we don't always have to have every answer, be the smartest guy in the room, and defer to somebody who might.
Yes, I think we've all done it. I'm sure where you try to mumble your way through an answer, and you're better off to just say, "I don't know."
Yeah.
And I think people see that authenticity, and especially in politicians, that hopefully it makes them actually maybe look at them in a different light. That hey, we're all doing our best, but we're human. We don't have the answers to everything, but we'll help you try to find the solution or get you on your way to getting that problem solved. It just might not be me; it might be somebody else.
So I think you first came on my radar as an urban planner when I was doing that, and you were one of the mayors here in Ontario that was always leading on the housing file, demonstrating a lot of leadership and pushing the boundary, especially in the community of Guelph. Before we get into the housing discussion, why don't you orient us a little bit around the city of Guelph?
Sure.
Kind of an hour down the 401 west there.
Yeah, so we're about 150,000 or so people, and of course we have the University of Guelph, which automatically has an influx of 25, 30,000 more people that all of a sudden show up in the city, and it really makes our city what it is. It's very.
I was actually one of those guys in 2006. I played rugby at the University of Guelph. I lived at 302 College, just I guess north of the Hamlin.
Oh, that place was condemned. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a great town. Was it Doogie's?
Yeah.
Is that still around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
you probably don't go there that often.
I don't, but
okay.
but I definitely know it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Your picture's up in the wall and everything. No, I was kidding.
Okay.
But yeah, 150 or so thousand people, and geographically, we're kind of sitting in a really great spot. We are that sort of hour away from Toronto, just outside of the GTA. We're just like a half an hour from Kitchener, an hour from London, and a bit. So we're sort of geographically set up in a really nice spot. We have manufacturing and automotive is quite heavy.
Linamar's out there.
Yeah, Linamar is there, and huge in agri-food sector as well. We're really trying to attract on the clean tech, green technology front as well. for diversification of our community for businesses. And then, yeah, we're a fast-growing city, very fast. And, I think, here's maybe the segue into housing, but, a lot of people are finding the affordability of housing difficult in the GTA area. So there's that sort of slogan, drive till you qualify.
Right.
And a lot of people, they kind of start going down the 401 and then they hit Guelph and it's a little bit more affordable, right? So we have a great city, great people, and we are a fast-growing city with a lot of newcomers.
I love Guelph. I love my time there. I love getting back there from time to time. You have a really historic downtown.
Yes.
And I think Guelph has done a great job of preserving the heritage, leveraging the heritage,
Yes.
Not allowing it to be an impediment to the growth that you need to receive. But Toronto often gets sort of critiqued of maybe not doing the best job on heritage. There were a lot of sort of heritage buildings that are gone that probably should still be here.
Sure.
And then we wrap ourselves around heritage of things that are probably actually not heritage. How have you dealt with preserving downtown Guelph's historic look and feel, but also being able to accommodate the type of growth and intensification that a growing city needs?
Well, good question. We are right in the middle of creating sort of a district within our downtown to cover off the heritage issues. We've already had some of the draft policies come to us right now, and we felt it was important to have more of a district feel to our heritage policies than to do one-off buildings here or there. However, in the last meeting that we just had, I actually brought up, so I'm glad you mentioned this, I don't want it to be an impediment towards building. And if we can lay out up front what the rules of engagement are for developers in both the nonprofit and the for-profit private side, then at least they know what those rules of engagement are, make it easy to flow through the planning process, to still try to honor that heritage, but still be able to do the development that's required to especially build up in our downtown core, because we certainly want more people in our downtown. That's right where our GO station is, our transit station. We got Conestoga College that is going to be down there with a campus. A lot of growth is planned for our downtown core. We cannot have so many heritage restrictions and other restrictions that then don't, offer themselves to more density, which is what a downtown should be.
So you tabled that at council recently, and you sort of assert that position. How many council colleagues do you have?
So in Guelph, there's 12 councillors. Okay. So there's 6 wards. Yeah. There's 2 councillors per ward. Okay. And then myself as the mayor. So 13 altogether.
And what type of feedback when you assert that type of position? We're going to get into some of your housing policies, which I would say have been very progressive. But what type of feedback do you get when you take a position like that says, look, we need to have some balance here, and we need to make sure that we're able to accommodate growth?
There was nothing kind of, nobody was scouring at me or anything like that. I think it was a meeting specifically to get feedback. So I think it was tabled in a way that is feedback for our professional staff to take away. And I saw a few heads nodding around the room from my colleagues on council as well. And I think that there is a lot of just a lot of angst and anxiety around. You immediately say heritage, and then you think, I can't do anything. Yeah. But actually, if you upfront are able to put the parameters in place where there is still the ability to do a lot of really great building, but also protect that heritage value, it makes sense and people understand it.
So Guelph is growing really fast. I always make note, last year, City of Toronto shipped 70,000 individuals to
I heard about that.
Yeah. Other parts in the GTHA, further abroad, maybe Wellington County. Are you guys Wellington?
We are Wellington County. We're the middle of Wellington County.
Right, interprovincial, sometimes out to Alberta. So Guelph, no doubt, is a recipient of many of those Torontonians who are pushing out into different jurisdictions, maybe for more space, more affordability, maybe because it feels safer. Have you noticed a lot of folks that are coming out to Guelph, perhaps leaving Toronto? What are they seeking, and how does that land?
I have, actually, and it's a mix, I would say, of both younger families and seniors that are like retiring, people that are retiring. I've seen probably most of that sort of demographic. I would say that one of the great things is the province does have a GO station in Guelph, and all-day two-way GO is coming. We're continually having more trains and more options coming.
We've heard about that for years, but
Yeah.
now it's happening.
It's actually
You
happening.
actually took the GO train today.
Yeah, we got in, and it was fantastic. It was only like an hour and 15 minutes.
That's
it was
amazing.
amazing. The province, to their credit, they put about $50 million of infrastructure work into double tracking and
Wow.
and more space there at our station, and so they're doing really good there. So the GO train is being interesting from that young family perspective, because if they work somewhere else, work in Toronto, work in Kitchener, they can still grab that GO train and they can go to where they need to be, but they're living in Guelph. I would say a lot of the things that Guelph does have to offer is just, again, we're sort of geographically centered around many of the other areas that you could still get to within a good amount of time, but we're that medium-sized city that still has all the kind of big city amenities. And I would also say that just our parks and green space are very attractive. Our trails are very attractive to a lot of people as well. We have a lot of that within our city too. So there's people moving towards Guelph, and we'll take them.
Yeah, no, it's nice to attract new people and to have that type of growth. It comes from a lot of the time a housing affordability issue.
It does.
Housing that people can afford. And you've been a huge champion on this. And part of that has been your progressive policies when it comes to missing middle. I think that was kind of like one of the first times you came on the radar for me was a mayor champion out in Guelph, leading the conversation in the province and in fact in the country on missing middle and gentle density.
Yep.
Now, Guelph is a historic community,
Yep.
and you must be balancing the views and perspective of people who've been there for a long time,
Yep.
and then the new people who would like to be there. How do you take something like gentle density or missing middle, which is really the idea of introducing small apartments, multiplexes, infill
Yep.
into existing neighborhoods? How does that land in a historic community like Guelph?
Yeah, so you've laid that out very well. It is still a struggle. I think you're right that I and others really kind of raised our voices several years ago. We were maybe 3 or 4 years into really where this crisis had been put on everyone's radar finally. And then you started to see municipalities start to make some policy decision changes. Guelph actually made the decision to do 3 units as of right, as an example, before the province even mandated it.
Right.
Just last year, we approved 4 units as of right. And now we are looking to actually see how we can do more than 4, 5 units or more. As of right, we're going to get a report back on that in regards to maybe just like corner lots and things like that. So we're expanding that infill opportunity. In Guelph, we have about 50% for infill, and about 50% will be in the green space that we still have within the community. So I think there's still some growing pains, no pun intended, about how things are working with the infill because it's a big change. But I will just say this to people, and I try to make it a bit more non-political, but just a real story, and it's my family. So I have a 23-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter. They're still at home. And when I got married to Rachel, my wife, I was 23, and she was 19. We were very young. And we bought our first home when we got married. And I did that with $10,000 down.
Wow.
I remember selling my baseball card collection and my drum set and a whole bunch of other stuff to get the down payment. But at the time, I only made $21,700 a year in salary. And my wife Rachel was working part-time at Ladies a Champ in the mall. And we got a mortgage.
Wow.
And now, fast forward, we've been married 26 years. I got a son and a daughter that are the same ages as when we got married. And there is absolutely no way they can afford a place to either buy, or it's difficult to even rent.
Right.
And so I'm taking my mayor hat off when I talk to people a lot. And I'm like, I'm just a dad.
Right.
And I'm just trying to look out for my kids.
Right.
It's the generation of my kids that we must be looking at, because it is a struggle for them. We have to make policies, and we have to push and make people feel a little bit uncomfortable so that these types of opportunities for that next generation actually come to fruition for them. Because I love my kids, but I don't really want them in my basement for the rest of my life. You know,
Right.
so I just think if you tell these stories, and that's a real story, that's my lived experience, people tend to start to understand a little bit more. And I think as these things happen across cities, not just like Guelph, but others, people will come on side.
It's interesting, as I've been going across Toronto and hearing from more and more people over the past couple of years, I always think about the affordability challenge with housing, kind of from my perspective. Again, young dad,
Yeah.
you're paying a big mortgage, you're paying childcare, it's all after tax dollars.
Yeah.
There's really not a lot of money left at the end of the month. People are struggling to find a place that they can afford to rent, or the idea of coming up with 20% for a down payment is it's not viable for a lot of folks, right?
You're absolutely right.
And so it's my friends, my colleagues, and others that are leaving the city in the fight for affordability.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
When people leave because of those reasons, you're also now missing those people that were usually invested in your city, that volunteered, that wanted to give back in other ways to the city. It's not just about a job. They wanted to do other things within your city. So you're losing those citizens and or businesses that want to give back, and now they're going somewhere else, and you've now lost that opportunity. That's why affordability is so important, because you want people to have a roof over their head that they can afford, but you also want them to be the people that give back and volunteer in your community. You want them to stay.
Well, and we need mechanics, and we need teachers, and we need nurses, and these are the people that would make too much money to qualify for any subsidized housing, but don't make enough money to be able to afford to live in Toronto. So they're pushing out into other markets, and again, often to a place like Guelph's benefit. But the other side of that I'm hearing from people is from, parents with adult age children, and maybe they have grandkids. And the other side of that, when I think about it from my friend circle, the other side of that is like now the grandparents can't see the grandkids. Now the grandkids are living in London, Ontario, and it's 2 hours if there wasn't traffic, but practically speaking, like 4 hours to get there or something. And so you see folks here in Toronto who paid off their mortgage a long time. They have the adult children, but they are now losing access to their family because it's their kids that are having to leave. So when you have those conversations in Guelph, when you put it in the context of your kids, your adult kids, and the challenges on why we need to push for policy solutions to address this, I think generationally, you could talk to a lot of people about that, and they get it. Whether that is, high school kids thinking about like, am I going to be able to stay in Guelph, or am I going to have to leave? Young professionals, maybe university students, and of course, folks with adult children or seniors.
Bang on.
Yeah.
And I would just say that I do recognize that change is difficult. I think we all need to recognize that, especially for infill type of developments, multi-unit type of planning and housing. But we also need that extra supply to try to bring prices down as much as we can too. So it's a tough go in the municipal world right now. But people need to look for solutions, and I think at the municipal level we're trying to give it. And the province and the feds, people are just looking for all of us to kind of work together and actually see tangible outcomes. And I think we're starting to see that in Guelph.
So how do you navigate some of this stuff through council? Because we had conversations about neighborhood retail, wasn't ready. We had conversations about sixplex, wasn't ready. Like different things that have been discussed here, but it sort of felt like the work wasn't put through. The work of capacity building in different communities in different parts of our boroughs, folks weren't on side. We hadn't seen necessarily the leadership wrap their arms around this issue and drive it. That hasn't been the experience at Guelph, and I know it hasn't always been easy, but what has that been like, both working with community and maybe even more, to the point of getting it passed, working with council?
I think council has recognized that the crisis deserves a response.
Right.
And so, people expect politicians to work at the level of crisis, which is urgency. So by continually not doing things, I think it doesn't help at all. I will say that that the part of the crisis issue is real, and I think that's motivated us. I will say that some of the funding that we've received from upper levels of government also has some strings attached to it, which makes us have to move a little bit faster in getting some things done. So that has helped out as well. And I would just say that I think we've done it right. We've done a lot of public engagement. There's always differences of opinions, but so far, we have done sort of the missing middle pieces of policy work that really needed to be done. And now I'm looking at some of the streets that I drive down, and I know that there's a tiny home in that backyard. You might not see it from the roadway, but I know there's one back there. You know, I see a house that's being taken down, and now there's 3 houses where there used to be one. And there's going to be some angst in that. But I think at the end of the day, when those places people are living in it, and they're going to their car, and they're waving to their neighbor, and it's landscaped, and it looks great, I think people will start to understand why we're doing what we're doing.
So at the extreme end of this conversation, you know, and where the crisis becomes most acute is the issue around homelessness.
Yes.
And municipalities across the province are dealing with this, different size and scale depending on the context. But, you know, that Guelph is not immune to those issues.
No.
And you've recently taken some steps that a lot of folks around the province are watching very closely. Before we get into the bylaw specifically, what does the homeless situation look like in Guelph right now? What are you dealing with?
Well, we would probably have just over 200 or so that would be considered homeless, chronic homelessness. Now, that does not mean that all of them are in a tent, in encampment somewhere. Some of them will be couch surfing, staying with family or friends. They still are, you know, without a place, but they at least have a roof over their head. I would suggest that there's between 20 to 40 maybe that are in the encampment sort of category, if we could call it that. And it has been very, very difficult. You know, as of last year, I believe there was 1,400 encampments across Ontario. This is an issue that continues to climb. You know, municipalities...
Our numbers in Toronto have doubled over the past couple of years.
Okay, so that's very similar to many municipalities are facing. And Frank, I'm going to be blunt, but this issue, a lot of it is based on, unfortunately, major addiction and mental health issues. Those are healthcare issues.
Right.
Property taxes were never meant to go to those issues.
Right.
That is a provincial jurisdiction.
Right.
And so the province does need to step into this space and help municipalities. You know, there's that old saying, I have a picture of myself and Hazel McCallion in my office. And there's that old saying from Hazel that says, the feds have all the money and the province makes all the rules and the cities have all the problems. And is that not true or what, right? And so when it comes to this issue, we're having the problems. And but the province needs to step into this space.
So last year, and for our listeners, you're a member of the Ontario Big City Mayors Caucus.
Yep.
You folks put out a statement calling on the province to use the notwithstanding clause to address our homelessness and mental health and addictions crisis.
Well, I'll stop you there just for a second, just to make sure we're saying the right thing. There was a kind of a different faction of the group of the Ontario Big City Mayors that actually said that maybe we should look at the province to ask them if they would consider using the notwithstanding clause. So it wasn't a position of the Ontario Big City Mayors, but there was about 16 mayors across the province of big cities that actually signed their name to a letter to the Premier saying, you need to do a list of several things.
Right.
That was just one of them.
Right.
Amongst that, including housing, including help for the homeless. But there are certain people that I refuse to see on the street that are just dying.
Right.
And then they refuse help. And so we say, oh, okay, what?
Right.
Pardon? So, you know, if we saw someone with, dementia today that was lost on a street, and we would go and we would take that person, we would get them help. We would take them to get the help that they needed because they're not in the right frame of mind. The mental health and or addictions and the brain injuries from addictions that people are struggling with, they are not in the right frame of mind. And I believe in compassion and intervention for those people that do need to be taken to a place where they can get better. That's what we want. I do not want these people to die. Now, part of that was the notwithstanding clause, as you just brought up. And that was in regards to encampments. And frankly, we offer many people a place to stay, whether it's a hotel room or an actual unit of their own. And, we get rid of the rules. You can have a partner with you. You can have a pet with you. You can have your stuff with you. Yet they continue to refuse. and they were doing things in real public spaces, like on a baseball diamond or on a playground. And when they refuse, I believe, and this is just my personal opinion, that at that point, we need to actually have them to be moved.
Yeah.
And people will then say, well, where are you going to put them? That's a fair question. Well, not there.
Right.
Not on the playground.
Right.
Not on the baseball diamond. So that's where we were asking the Premier to consider the notwithstanding clause. He has not done that yet, but there are court cases across the province that are coming up where he may have to consider that. I don't know if he will, but we'll have to see how those court cases go.
So I agree wholeheartedly with you on both of those points. And you brought a bylaw forward in Guelph.
I did.
And I've actually modeled one off of the work that you had done there. But your bylaw, and you can speak to it, but was basically saying you weren't going to have encampments on playgrounds and public property near daycares and schools. Is that right?
Yeah. So we brought one forward last October that was giving some parameters around where they could or could not be. And then in the spring of this year, I brought forward an amendment to that said there should be no encampments where they are in a public space, park as an example, that is attached to any daycare or school. And anyways, that did pass. That amendment did pass. Now, it was a close vote. It was 6-5, if I recall. So it was a close vote, but council did make the decision to uphold that. So we do have a public space bylaw that puts certain parameters around where encampments can and cannot be. And then the amendment that I brought forward was not near daycares and schools, also did pass. And we've been having success with that.
Picked up the mantle and tried to follow suit here in Toronto, basically saying you can't have an encampment within 200 meters of a playground, public school, or daycare.
Okay.
And if they are there, they have to be removed within 48 hours. Because what we see is the longer they are there, they tend to entrench.
They will.
They attract more tents and more people, and then they're more difficult to deal with. And we are, of course, aware of some of the court cases. There's still the requirement, as you described perfectly, to offer the shelter.
Yes.
And so it's all contingent on that a shelter space is available. You offer the shelter.
Yes.
But there does come a point when you offer the shelter, you offer the housing. The individuals need to take that, because the other side of that is people losing access to their parks and their public spaces.
Correct.
And I don't think it's a compatible use when it's on the chain link fence border with a daycare.
Yeah, and it's a difficult conversation, and maybe for another hour-long podcast. And the whole Charter of Rights argument comes up, which is a valid argument to have and discuss. But I always come to the point, well, where is the rights of the mother who wants to take their kids to the playground? Where are their rights compared to the rights of someone that's being offered help, offered housing, and they just want to stay and block access to that playground area, or to cause issues within that area? God bless them, and God bless them. Everyone needs to have some help, but for me, I think we have to sort of get back to some common sense in this area.
Right.
And that's where we're doing some things from a policy perspective in Guelph, and we'll see what happens with some of these court cases, both in Kitchener, Waterloo, and in Hamilton, that are under the microscope right now.
Well, I think you're right, and how you set it up around individuals who are suffering from addiction and mental health issues, and those are health issues.
They are.
They need treatment. And I don't think it's compassionate or dignified to have people living in a park.
No.
That is not an acceptable response. And in fact, it is emblematic of a failure of government at all levels. So that's not the right response. And it's been interesting to watch the positions of, you have an NDP government in British Columbia, Conservative government in Alberta, an NDP government in Manitoba.
That's right.
All moving in the direction of acknowledging that these individuals who are suffering from health issues need to have treatment.
They have to.
Sometimes that treatment needs to be compelled.
Recovery focused, I believe, is the way to go. And I think you're starting to see that pendulum kind of come back this way. And I'm hopeful that the province of Ontario will take a serious look at these issues too, because as I said, municipalities have all the problems. But at the end of the day, we are actually talking about real people.
Right.
And we can talk about potholes and pipes in the ground and infrastructure that's needed, but people are more important even than those. So we have to try to help these people survive. And I think leaving them in these types of situations is completely uncalled for. And we need to be able to help these people in the right way. Hopefully the province kind of steps in and helps.
It's always, as I've followed your work for years now, you've always struck me as such a genuine and authentic leader. And even in that comment that you were just saying there, you want to help people.
Oh yeah, 100%.
What drove you, just as we wrap up here, what drove you to sort of get into politics in the first place? And
I lost a bet. No,
but for our listeners, you were a one-term councillor, so you got elected to council, and then after one term, you ran for mayor and beat an incumbent, which is a remarkable achievement. But where did it come from, and what keeps you going on the day-to-day?
You know what? I have always grasped the idea that just a life of no regrets. Try, and I try to instill that in my own kids. I would rather try and fail, and I did. When I ran for council, the first time I lost, and you learn a lot when you lose.
I know that.
Okay, fair enough. And then 4 years, you get back and you try again, and I won as a councillor. And then, I don't know what it is, but I get joy, I guess is the right word to say, when I help people, and It just is. It's the small stuff sometimes. It's the stuff that's not in the paper. It's like the garbage got mixed, and you get a call and you help somebody with stuff. Like it's the small stuff that no one ever knows about. That is just, it brings me joy, and so it is a servant position. It really is at the end of the day, and it can take a toll. But I just like to serve in this way. I had the opportunity to try. Here I am. And I really do enjoy it. And I actually would submit to say that I really encourage people to put their name forward for municipal politics. Like, it is wonderful. It really is. There's some issues every now and then, but at the end of the day, it's really wonderful.
It's a level of government where you can make the biggest difference.
It is.
And I bet you're the type of guy, when you go to No Frills or Food Basics or whatever, it's never an in and out.
No, it's an hour to get milk.
Exactly.
But that's okay.
Yeah, but
I come up with a list.
Yeah.
Pothole here.
To-do list.
Cracking the sidewalk here. Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks for serving. Thanks for what you do for the community.
Oh, you too, for the community too. Yeah.
And we were able to make this work on short notice.
On the fly. I love it.
This is probably our last episode before the holiday break. So for everybody listening, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas,
we'll see
Happy
you in
holidays.
26. And Cam, thanks so much for being with us.
No
It's good to
problem,
see you,
man.
buddy.
Nice to see you. All the
Cheers.
best. Yeah.
All right.
This is For the Love of TO.